As Gopnik struggles to stay conscious, the pool's water distorting his surroundings, he curses at Eugene, realizing with growing frustration that this boy won't let go. The chokehold tightens around his throat, and for the first time in the fight, Gopnik feels genuine panic rising. Eugene, his arms trembling from the effort, thinks that Gopnik is far more resilient than he had initially expected. His grip weakens from the strain, but he knows that if he can squeeze just a little bit harder, it might all be over. Eugene's heart pounds in his chest as desperation and determination collide within him. Sensing Eugene's struggle, Gopnik capitalizes on the moment of weakness. His eye catches a glimpse of Eugene's fatigue, and with a sudden burst of anger, he smashes the handle of his bat into Eugene's arm. The blow is sharp, sending a jolt of pain through Eugene's body, and he's forced to release his hold. Gopnik, regaining control, grins wickedly as he swings his bat with full force, intending to end the fight in a single, brutal strike. But just before the bat makes contact, Eugene dives underwater, narrowly avoiding what would have been a crushing blow. Gopnik's bat crashes into the water with a violent splash, sending shockwaves across the pool's surface. Eugene resurfaces a few lanes away, clutching at his mouth, gasping for breath as he processes what just happened. He knows that if he hadn't moved in time, the strike could have seriously injured or even killed him. He briefly considers how the water had softened the impact, but those thoughts are quickly interrupted by Gopnik, who, to Eugene's astonishment, is now crouching on one of the pool's lane lines. Perfectly balanced, Gopnik's dark and murderous expression is clear as he taunts Eugene from above, his bat resting menacingly on his shoulder. Eugene watches in disbelief as Gopnik, balanced as if on solid ground, leans against the line and suddenly launches himself forward with terrifying speed. The bat comes down toward Eugene once more, and in an instant, Eugene dives again, narrowly avoiding the blow. Water splashes violently around them, and Eugene looks up to find Gopnik once again perched on another lane line, mocking him. Eugene feels a chill as he realizes that Gopnik is playing with him, taunting him, enjoying the power he holds over Eugene. The way Gopnik moves with such unnatural grace on the unstable pool lanes sends a wave of unease through Eugene. How is he able to balance so effortlessly, Eugene wonders. Gopnik, hair wild and eyes gleaming with sadistic pleasure, looks down at Eugene as if he's a predator toying with its prey. His voice drips with malice as he continues to mock Eugene, daring him to stay underwater forever. The taunting grows louder, more vicious, as Gopnik questions how long Eugene can truly hold his breath before he's forced to surface and face the inevitable beating. The gleam in Gopnik's eyes reflects a madness that sends fear coursing through Eugene's veins. Desperation creeps in as Eugene swims away, his arms and legs moving frantically through the water. He knows he can't outpace Gopnik forever, especially with his breath running thin. As Gopnik runs effortlessly along the lane lines beside him, calling out with cruel amusement, Eugene feels panic settling in. The pressure in his lungs is building, his vision beginning to blur as his body screams for oxygen. He clutches his mouth, weighing his options. If he surfaces, he knows Gopnik will be waiting, bat raised, ready to end him with a brutal swing. He imagines the bat smashing into his skull, the water around him turning crimson as blood spills into the pool. Eugene has to think quickly, his mind racing as he desperately tries to come up with a plan. He needs to buy himself more time, anything to avoid the imminent danger that Gopnik poses. But the situation is becoming increasingly dire. Gopnik, leaning over the lane line with a sinister smile, mocks Eugene, impressed that he's managed to hold his breath for as long as he has. Eugene, feeling the strain on his body, dives deeper, his knife now drawn, determination etched across his face. This is his moment, he thinks. This is when he strikes back. With every ounce of strength left in him, Eugene surfaces with incredible speed, his knife cutting cleanly through the lane line where Gopnik was standing just moments before. Gopnik leaps back instinctively, narrowly avoiding the blade, but the unexpected move sends him splashing into the water, surprised and momentarily off balance. The lane line, now torn apart, floats uselessly on the surface as Eugene prepares for his next move. Gopnik rises from the water, his face twisted with fury as he realizes that Eugene is playing tricks on him. Eugene, fully submerged, clutches his knife tightly, his eyes burning with determination. He watches as Gopnik, now fully in the water, readies his bat, preparing for another strike. Gopnik, his expression dark, believes that he can overpower Eugene even in these conditions, but as he raises the bat, he quickly realizes how cumbersome the weapon feels underwater. Water, denser than air, slows Gopnik's movements, offering resistance to his large, heavy bat. Swinging a weapon of that size underwater is like moving through thick mud, slow and awkward. Meanwhile, Eugene's knife, small and agile, moves with ease through the water, giving him a distinct advantage. As Eugene charges forward, Gopnik attempts to dodge, but in his haste, he doesn't notice that Eugene has looped the pool's lane cord around his neck. With a sharp, deliberate tug, Eugene tightens the cord around Gopnik's throat. Gopnik's eyes widen in shock as he struggles to free himself from the makeshift noose. His hands claw at the cord, but the more he fights, the tighter it becomes. Eugene, his face twisted with focus, holds the cord firm, bubbles escaping from his mouth as he strains to keep his grip. Gopnik's thrashing becomes more erratic, the water splashing violently around them as his movements grow desperate. The surface of the pool stills for a moment before Eugene suddenly bursts through, gasping for air. He looks behind him, his breath ragged, as Gopnik's body slowly floats to the surface, unmoving. The lane cord remains tightly wrapped around his neck, and his eyes stare blankly into the distance. Eugene watches, his chest heaving, before he allows a smirk to tug at the corners of his lips. With a mocking expression, Eugene taunts the lifeless Gopnik, his voice dripping with contempt. He sticks out his tongue, calling Gopnik an amateur, his eyes filled with cold satisfaction. He had done it. He had won. And now, as he stands victorious, he knows that he is no ordinary child. He is a good child, trained to survive at any cost. Rachel moves with precision and intensity, her body taut as she reloads her submachine gun using her teeth, the motion fluid and aggressive. She wastes no time, immediately unleashing a torrent of bullets toward the henchmen chasing her and Mari. Every step she takes sends sharp pulses of pain through her injured thigh, a bullet wound from earlier slowing her down. The pain is searing, but Rachel refuses to let it stop her, gritting her teeth as she fires off shots, each bullet finding its mark. Several henchmen fall, hit in their ankles or arms, incapacitated by her deadly accuracy. Mari, hiding behind cover, peers out with concern, her gaze fixed on Rachel as she fights through the pain. She asks how Rachel is holding up, her voice tinged with worry. Despite the throb in her leg, Rachel's response is firm, insisting she's fine, though the strain in her movement says otherwise. Mari scans their surroundings, quickly realizing that the situation has spiraled beyond what they anticipated. The number of henchmen closing in on them is greater than they had planned for, and Mari, always quick to assess, suggests they consider retreating. Things are becoming dangerously out of control. Rachel's expression hardens as she dismisses the idea with cold resolve. There will be no retreat. They are here to finish the job. Sion is dealing with Dmitri, leaving Rachel to handle the henchmen. She ducks behind cover to reload her weapon, but as she snaps the magazine into place, the realization hits her. This is her last one. Mari, standing nearby, points out the grim reality that two people can't possibly win this fight. The odds are stacked too high. Pulling out her phone, Mari continues to evaluate the situation, noting that unexpected variables like Barefoot, Dmitri, and even Gopnik have thrown off their plans. She suggests that calling for backup might be necessary. Rachel, irritated, doesn't bother looking at Mari as she dismisses the idea, implying that Mari sounds weak for even suggesting it. But Mari, undeterred, insists that seeking backup is the most logical course of action. As Rachel finishes reloading, a troubling thought occurs to her. Turning to Mari, suspicion etches into her features, and she brings up the fact that Mari didn't have access to the security feeds at the start of the mission. She questions how Mari knew about Gopnik's presence. Mari looks up from her phone, a sly smile creeping across her face before she quickly hides it behind her carefully manicured nails. She admits to making a careless mistake, laughing softly to herself, as though amused by her own error. If Eugene were here, she muses, he would mock her for it, calling her an amateur. Rachel's eyes narrow, her suspicions deepening. Without hesitation, she raises her gun and points it directly at Mari, demanding to know how she could have done this. Shock is evident in her voice as she tries to comprehend how someone under the control of Dead Mansion could be capable of betrayal. Rachel's fury mounts, her voice rising as she orders Mari to explain herself, her demand tinged with desperation. Mari, seemingly unaffected by the weapon aimed at her, calmly reaches into her blouse and pulls out a silver chain, a cross dangling from it. With a composed tone, she reveals that they have found a way to break the control of Dead Mansion's 3 principles. The cross slips from Mari's hand, landing on the floor with a soft metallic clink. Rachel's mind races as she struggles to grasp the implications of Mari's words. She demands to know what Mari means by breaking the principles, but another, more pressing question quickly takes hold. She asks Mari who else is involved, who the we is that she has mentioned. Mari's expression turns blank, her voice dropping to a chilling calm as she reveals that the one responsible is Noel, and that he has returned. The name strikes Rachel like a blow, anger flaring in her eyes as she asks Mari to repeat herself. Before Rachel can react further, Mari lunges at her, catching her off guard. Mari quickly ejects the magazine from Rachel's gun, taunting Rachel, knowing that she now has no bullets left. Undeterred, Mari attacks, striking Rachel with the magazine, aiming for her wounded thigh. Pain explodes through Rachel's leg, but she refuses to be slowed down. With fury burning in her eyes, she raises her gun, ready to use it as a blunt weapon. She swings at Mari, who ducks just in time, dodging the blow. Mari counters by slamming the magazine into Rachel's injured leg again, causing another burst of pain to shoot through her body. Rachel, screaming in both rage and agony, grabs hold of Mari's wrist, her grip tightening as she prepares to strike back. She snarls at Mari, her mind swirling with fury as she tries to make sense of everything. Just as she is about to land a blow, Rachel feels the cold press of a gun barrel against the back of her head. A voice orders her to freeze. The henchmen have caught up to them, their guns now trained on Rachel from all sides. Rachel, refusing to back down, turns to face them, but one of the men strikes her hard, slamming her face into the ground. Blood spills from her nose as she lies there, dazed and disoriented. One of the henchmen rolls up his sleeves, sneering as he announces that it is their turn to make Rachel suffer. From a short distance away, Mari watches, her expression calm and cold. As another henchman, clutching his injured arm, limps into the corridor, he asks what is happening. Mari greets him with a smile, assuring him that everything is over. Her eyes shift to Rachel, now being dragged across the floor by her hair. With a mocking tone, Mari suggests it is time to deal with Sion. Rachel, normally fiercely protective of Sion, can only stare blankly, her face bloodied, her spirit momentarily crushed. She is defeated, unable to muster a response. At the dimly lit school, Joseph's father approaches Yunho's mother with a cold, calculating demeanor, his hand gripping the handle of a gleaming knife. His twisted smile widens as he thrusts the weapon toward her, his voice dripping with malice as he declares that it is time for them to exact their revenge. His eyes, dark with cruel intent, glint with a demented look as he mentions Sion Park, his words thick with hatred. The sharp blade of the knife reflects the fear in Hyunho's mother's wide, trembling eyes, the steel capturing her growing dread. Her hand, shaking, hovers over the weapon, but the weight of the moment leaves her frozen. As her gaze remains fixed on the knife, Hyunho's mother struggles to steady her breath. The tension in the room grows palpable, each second dragging as she fights against the rising tide of fear. Her fingers tremble over the blade, but after a brief hesitation, something inside her stirs. Her voice, barely a whisper at first, rises from within, carrying the strength she didn't know she still had. Joseph's father, watching her with amused contempt, seems to relish her struggle, a mocking grin spreading across his face. Then, in a sudden burst of defiance, Hyunho's mother flings the knife behind her. The weapon clatters loudly against the cold floor of the classroom, the sharp sound cutting through the tension like a physical blow. She faces him now, her trembling subsiding as she finds the courage to speak. Her words are filled with conviction, denouncing him and the twisted notion that someone like him should ever have been a parent. The knife lying discarded on the floor serves as a stark punctuation to her statement, a clear rejection of his violent intentions. Joseph's father, however, remains unfazed by her defiance. His smile doesn't falter as he listens to her, and his amusement only deepens. He turns toward her, his expression filled with smug arrogance, and questions her in a tone dripping with scorn. To him, a parent is someone who takes action, someone who demands compensation or seeks revenge for their child, no matter how foolish that child might be. In his twisted mind, Hyunho's mother's refusal to act, her unwillingness to retaliate, makes her weak, unworthy of the title of parent. His words are like venom, designed to provoke and belittle her. Fury ignites in Hyunho's mother as his vile speech continues. Her face flushes with anger, and in a swift motion, she slaps Joseph's father across the face, the sound echoing in the stillness of the room. The slap is not just an act of defiance, but a desperate attempt to silence his poisonous words. For a brief moment, silence reigns. Joseph's face, now red from the slap, contorts in irritation. He raises a handkerchief to his face, dabbing at his cheek with an annoyed expression. His voice, filled with frustration, betrays his disappointment. What he had thought would be an easy task has turned out to be more difficult than he anticipated. Hyunho's mother's resistance is stronger than he had hoped. As if on cue, the classroom door swings open, and a group of henchmen enters, surrounding Hyunho's mother. Their presence fills the room with an oppressive sense of danger. Joseph's father, now facing away from her, remains eerily calm, almost indifferent to the increasing threat his men present. He speaks again, his tone measured and devoid of any real emotion, stating that efficiency is crucial in matters of work. His eyes shift toward his men, a sly smile curling at the edges of his lips as he admires the overwhelming force now arrayed against Hyunho's mother. The sight of the henchmen closing in causes her heart to pound in her chest, terror gripping her as she realizes just how outnumbered she is. Meanwhile, Sion stands in the dimly lit principal's office, tucking a photo into his jacket pocket with an air of exhaustion. His movements are slow, weighed down by fatigue, as he mutters to himself about setting the photos aside for now. His body protests with every shift. His back cracks audibly as he stretches, a reminder of the intense fight that left the Russian mercenary sprawled unconscious on the floor. The man, a hulking brute, had been no match for Sion's skill, but the battle had taken its toll, leaving Sion aching and sore. As he rolls his neck, the popping of joints echoes through the room, and a wry grin crosses his face. The absurdity of the situation dawns on him. Fighting Russian mercenaries in the office of a school principal would make for an unbelievable, almost comical story. Who would ever believe such a bizarre tale? He chuckles at the thought, still loosening the tension in his body. When his neck cracks again, a subtle red light catches his attention. A camera, hidden but now noticeable, records his every move, the small lens glowing faintly in the shadows. Sion's thoughts shift to the bigger picture as he contemplates the mercenaries. He muses over how impressive it is that Byungwoo Construction had the resources and connections to hire Russian operatives. This wasn't something just anyone could arrange. It required powerful contacts, deep within the world of crime or international mercenary work. As the realization hits him, his smile fades, replaced by a creeping suspicion. Not just anyone could have pulled this off. Whoever was behind this operation had far more reach and influence than he initially thought. His epiphany crashes over him like cold water. Suddenly, Sion spins on his heel, sprinting toward the exit, cursing himself for not seeing it earlier. Bursting out of the principal's office, he skids to a halt in the hallway, only to come face to face with a group of henchmen. They hadn't been expecting him. One of them, wide-eyed with surprise, yells that he's found the guy with the yellow hair. The description hangs in the air for a split second before Sion launches into action. With a swift, vicious knee, he slams into the henchman's face, shattering his nose in an explosion of blood. The man crumples, stumbling backward into his comrades, gasping in pain. Sion barely spares him a glance, taunting the group for constantly referring to him by his hair color. They should know his name by now. As if to emphasize his words, another henchman lunges from Sion's blind spot, a knife flashing toward him. But Sion's reflexes are sharp, and with a well-placed elbow, he sends the attacker flying, the force of the blow leaving the man sprawled on the floor. One of the remaining henchmen, panic setting in, frantically fumbles with a pistol, trying to load it in time to stop Sion's onslaught. His hands shake as he manages to fire off a volley of shots. Reacting instantly, Sion grabs one of the fallen henchmen and uses him as a human shield, the bullets ricocheting harmlessly off the Kevlar vest. The man in the vest yells at the shooter to stop, terrified and helpless in Sion's grip. But Sion doesn't slow down. Moving low to the ground, he charges the gunman, his voice dripping with mockery as he scolds the shooter for ignoring his comrade's pleas. The bullets might not have killed him, Sion taunts, but they would certainly hurt. Frustrated, the gunman silently vows to end this madness by shooting Sion in the head. His aim steadies as he squeezes the trigger, but it's too late. Sion moves like lightning, his elbow slamming upward into the gun just as the shot is fired, sending the bullet harmlessly into the ceiling. With the speed and power of a wild animal, Sion delivers a crushing punch to the man's face, the force reverberating through the hallway. The impact is brutal, the sound echoing in the narrow space as the gunman crumples to the floor, defeated in an instant. Rachel's consciousness slowly returns, her eyelids fluttering open as she finds herself slumped against a cold, metallic pole, restrained and alone. Disoriented, she barely has time to take in her surroundings before a familiar voice echoes through the room. Marie's. Seated comfortably at a bank of computers, sipping casually on a cup of coffee, Marie's voice cuts through the stillness, taunting Rachel with her sarcastic tone. Seeing Marie, rage floods Rachel's body, her composure shattering instantly. She erupts, screaming threats, her fury at Marie's betrayal overwhelming her. She struggles against the restraints, her muscles straining, but a quick glance at her bound limbs reminds her of her current predicament. Realizing the futility of her outburst, Rachel forces herself to calm down, suppressing her emotions as she decides to bide her time. Despite the situation, her mind sharpens, focusing on finding the right moment to act. Marie, unfazed by Rachel's rage, remains calm, her demeanor almost unnervingly relaxed. She comments in a dispassionate tone, explaining that her actions aren't a betrayal of Dead Mansion, but an unveiling of the truth, who the true masterpiece of the organization really is. Her nonchalant attitude grates on Rachel, who seethes with anger beneath her stoic facade. However, Marie continues to reminisce, speaking of the Dead Mansion director, So, and the day he introduced her to the idea of Sion as the ultimate creation. As a child, Marie had been told that Sion was unique, a masterpiece unlike any other, and it had filled her with both awe and resentment. She remembers the director placing his hand on her head, urging her to be like Sion, a high praise that had gnawed at her even then. As she takes another sip of her coffee, Marie's face twists with bitterness, her memories bringing a scowl to her lips. She reflects on how much the director had been obsessed with Sion, treating him like a prized antique that could never be replaced. The praise had always angered Marie, and the more she learned about Sion, the more it fueled her frustration. When she finally met Sion, expecting to encounter this legend everyone spoke of, she found him to be nothing more than a mediocre, average boy, far from the mythical figure she had imagined. Now kneeling in front of Rachel, Marie's smile returns, though it's more of a cold, calculating expression. She tells Rachel that meeting Sion made her realize that legends are nothing but illusions of the past. Mari reaches out, her fingers brushing against the scar on Rachel's face. The touch is both invasive and mocking, as Mari claims that the director's glorification of Sion was merely a cover-up for his own failures. In an instant, Rachel lunges forward, attempting to bite Mari's hand, but Mari pulls back just in time, her composure unshaken. She continues speaking, indifferent to Rachel's aggression, noting that sometimes it's easier to accept the mistakes of others than to confront one's own shortcomings. Standing, Mari looks down at Rachel, her voice filled with determination. She declares her intention to show the director that legends are nothing more than relics, ready to be forgotten. She pulls up her sleeve, revealing the tattoo on her arm, 3 Cyrillic symbols that spell out DVA, her codename as the masterpiece of Dead Mansion's strategy. As Mari prepares to leave, Rachel's eyes are drawn to one of the monitors overhead. The CCTV feed shows Sion, standing still for a moment, before suddenly sprinting away, clearly acting on some revelation. Rachel can't help but snort, a grin spreading across her face. Marie, irritated, demands to know what Rachel finds so amusing. With a mocking look, Rachel comments on Sion's reckless behavior, almost daring Mari to realize that something bigger is at play. She taunts Mari, asking if she truly believed the director's only concern was Sion's whereabouts. Mari grips the sleeve of her hoodie, trying to maintain her composure, but Rachel continues, poking holes in Marie's logic. Rachel asserts that Mari's entire argument is flawed and doesn't make any sense, further driving her opponent's frustration. Mari's irritation grows into cold fury. In a swift, fluid motion, she reaches into her bag and pulls out a pistol. With precision, she fires a shot that grazes Rachel's cheek, the bullet landing impossibly close to its mark. Rachel remains unfazed, knowing Mari's skill is deliberate. Mari presses the gun to Rachel's scarred forehead, her eyes filled with cold intensity. Her warning is clear. She won't hesitate to do more than leave a scar if Rachel pushes her further. Rachel, however, smiles, sarcastically asking if Mari's feelings were hurt. Before their confrontation can escalate, the sound of wheels approaching interrupts them. Joseph's father enters the room, his wheelchair gliding smoothly across the floor as he sarcastically apologizes for the interruption. His bodyguards flank him as he surveys the situation, immediately recognizing that tensions between Mari and Rachel are at a boiling point. He approaches Rachel, his voice dripping with venom as he references the humiliation he had suffered at her hands. Clearly, revenge is on his mind, and he is eager to make Rachel pay. Mari, noticing a red mark on Joseph's father's face, inquires about what had happened. He dismisses it, saying it was a minor issue, and assures her that preparations have been completed. The camera briefly shifts, revealing Hyunho's mother slumped over a desk, and Hyunho himself, sprawled on a hospital roof, closely monitored by 3 henchmen. Mari thanks Joseph's father for his hard work, acknowledging how smoothly things have gone under his coordination. He brushes off the compliment, pleased to work alongside someone who understands the game. As he begins discussing the next steps, one of his bodyguards suddenly moves behind him, pressing a chloroform-soaked handkerchief to his face. Joseph's father barely has time to react before his consciousness begins to slip away. Confused and weak, he asks what's happening, but the bodyguard only offers a quiet apology. Adjusting his glasses, the bodyguard explains that he had received a better offer. This was the adult way to handle things. Mari, leaning in close to the unconscious Byung-woo, whispers that his usefulness had ended when he brought Sion into the situation. She promises that Joseph will still have a role to play, as the headlines will portray him as a father consumed by revenge for his son. With Byung-woo slumped in his wheelchair, Mari shifts her attention back to the CCTV, searching for Sion's whereabouts. A frown crosses her face as she notices something odd on the screen. Before she can fully grasp what she's seeing, Rachel interrupts, reminding Mari that among the children of Dead Mansion, there are those with exceptional talents. Rachel hints at the nickname she once gave to these talents, noting that Mari, with her strategic brilliance, was known as DVA. But Rachel isn't done yet. She reveals that Sion was the greatest masterpiece of all, possessing every talent one could imagine. A fact that shakes Marie to her core. As Mari grows visibly irritated, she dismisses Rachel's words, demanding that she get to the point. However, Rachel presses on, determined to make her message clear. She states that Sion was, without question, the greatest masterpiece of Dead Mansion, endowed with every conceivable talent. As she speaks, Marie's mind drifts back to the words that had haunted her throughout her childhood, the director's constant praise of Sion as the greatest masterpiece. The memory leaves a bitter taste in her mouth, her face twisting into a scowl as she recalls the accolades that had overshadowed her own existence. The weight of those words, once spoken so reverently, now hangs heavy in the air between them. Mari's brooding thoughts are abruptly interrupted as the room plunges into sudden darkness. Every light surrounding them flickers out in an instant, leaving the room bathed in eerie silence. Byung-woo's former bodyguard, unbothered at first, pulls out his phone, checking for any sign of a local power outage. Distracted by his device, he fails to notice the small but rapidly spreading cracks forming in the ceiling above them. Mari, however, does not miss the signs. Her eyes widen in alarm as the creaking above intensifies. Her shout to the bodyguard to watch out cuts through the darkness, but the warning comes too late. With a deafening crash, the ceiling above them shatters, and Sion bursts through in a blur of movement, descending directly onto the unsuspecting bodyguard. Before anyone can react, Sion's descent turns into a brutal strike. He uses the momentum of his fall to drive his elbow into the top of the bodyguard's head, the impact landing with a sickening thud that reverberates throughout the room. The bodyguard crumples to the ground, unconscious from the sheer force of the blow. In the midst of the chaos, Rachel, her face still streaked with blood, grins, utterly unfazed by the violence around her. For the first time since her capture, a sense of calm washes over her as she sees Sion standing before her. Despite the dire circumstances, she can't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. In Sion, she sees the truth of what she had been saying all along. He is the pinnacle of Dead Mansion's creations, the one child who had surpassed them all. Among the children of Dead Mansion, he is unquestionably the greatest. Sion Park, known by his codename Odin, had arrived, Dead Mansion's most formidable masterpiece, now unleashed.